Hey there, welcome back to Botanic Haven, the channel all about gardening, plant care, and creating those beautiful green spaces you've always dreamed of, whether they're tucked inside your home or blooming out in your backyard. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. And if you've been with us for a while, you already know we love talking about the real stuff. No fluff, just practical, down-to-earth advice that actually works. Today we're diving into one of my absolute favourite topics of the whole year, starting seeds in early March. There's something almost magical about pulling out your seed packets while there's still frost on the window, knowing that in a few short months, your garden is going to be absolutely bursting with life. I've been starting seeds indoors for years now, and I still get that same giddy feeling every single March. My neighbour Rose, she's been gardening for over 30 years. She once told me that seeds starting in early March is like making a promise to yourself. A promise that yes, spring is coming, and yes, you're going to be ready for it. And honestly, she's not wrong. The seeds you start now are the ones that will give you the biggest, most productive plants once the warm weather finally settles in. You're essentially giving them a head start, letting them develop strong roots and sturdy stems before they ever touch outdoor soil. Now, a lot of people get nervous about seed starting because they think it's complicated or requires a ton of fancy equipment. But it really doesn't. You need some good seed starting mix, some containers or trays, a warm spot, some light, natural or artificial, and a little bit of patience. That's genuinely it. My friend Lucas started his first indoor seed tray with paper cups he saved from the recycling bin, and that year he had the most incredible tomato plants on his street. So please don't let the idea of doing it right stop you from doing it at all. Let's talk about the seeds themselves, because that's what you're really here for. I want to walk you through 20 of the best seeds you can start in early March, and I'm going to tell you not just what they are, but why they deserve a spot in your seed tray and how to give them the best possible start. Some of these are vegetables, some are herbs, and a few are flowers, because a truly great garden has a little bit of everything. If this guide has helped you, write 1 in the comments, and if not, write 0. This way, I'll know which tips are most useful for your garden. Let's start with tomatoes, because honestly, could we start anywhere else? Tomatoes are the crown jewel of most home gardens, and they need a good 8 to 10 weeks of indoor growth before they're ready to go outside. Starting them in early March means they'll be ready to transplant right around late May, when the risk of frost is mostly gone in most temperate zones. Choose a variety that excites you, whether that's a classic Roma, a sweet cherry like Sun Gold, or a big beefy Brandywine. Plant the seeds about a 1/4 inch deep. Keep the soil consistently moist, but not soggy, and make sure they get plenty of light. Once those first true leaves appear, you'll feel like a real gardener, I promise. Right alongside tomatoes, you'll want to start your peppers. Peppers are actually a bit slower to germinate than tomatoes, which is exactly why March is perfect for them. Whether you're growing sweet bell peppers, banana peppers, or something spicy like jalapenos or habaneros, they all benefit from that extra time indoors. Peppers love warmth during germination. Ideally, the soil temperature should be around 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. If your house is cool, placing the tray on top of the refrigerator or using a seedling heat mat can make a huge difference. My friend Oliver swears by his heat mat. He used to struggle with pepper germination every year, and the moment he got one, his germination rate went from about 50% to nearly 100%. It's one of those investments that pays for itself immediately. Eggplant is another one that most gardeners overlook, and I genuinely don't understand why. It's such a gorgeous plant, glossy purple fruits, beautiful foliage, and it's incredibly versatile in the kitchen. Like peppers, eggplant is slow to get started and needs warm conditions to germinate properly. Starting in early March gives you big, healthy transplants by the time your garden is ready. Thin-skinned Japanese varieties like Ichiban are wonderful for beginners because they're prolific and easy to cook with. Moving on to herbs. Oh, where do I even begin? Herbs are some of the most satisfying things you can grow because you use them every single day and the payoff is immediate. Basil is the one I always tell people to start first. It's fast, it's fragrant, and there is absolutely nothing like fresh basil snipped straight into a pasta sauce or onto a pizza. Start basil seeds indoors in early March, and by the time your tomatoes are in the ground, your basil will be right there ready to join them. They're best friends in the garden too. Basil is said to help repel some pests that bother tomatoes, so planting them together is a win on every level. Parsley is another herb worth starting in March, though I want to prepare you for one thing: parsley is notoriously slow to germinate. It can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to see those first little sprouts. Don't panic, don't give up, and definitely don't assume the seeds are bad. They're just taking their time. Some gardeners soak parsley seeds overnight before planting to help speed things up a little. Once they do get going, though, parsley is incredibly hardy and will produce abundantly all season long. Cilantro is one of those herbs that people either love passionately or avoid entirely. But if you're in the love camp like I am, you know how amazing fresh cilantro tastes in salsas, tacos, soups, and salads. Cilantro actually prefers cooler temperatures and can bolt quickly in the summer heat, so starting it early gives you a chance to harvest a good crop before it goes to seed. When it does bolt, let some of it go. Those seeds are coriander, which is its own wonderful spice. My friend Daisy discovered this by accident one summer and was absolutely delighted when she realized she'd accidentally grown herself a spice crop. Let's talk about leeks. Leeks are underrated, underused, and incredibly delicious, and they need a long growing season, which is exactly why starting them in early March makes so much sense. They grow slowly and steadily, and by fall you'll have these magnificent, thick, sweet stalks that you can add to soups, stews, and gratins. Start them in a tray, and when they're about the thickness of a pencil, you can transplant them out. They're remarkably cold tolerant, so they can stay in the garden well into autumn or even early winter in mild climates. Celery is another vegetable that benefits enormously from an early start. It has one of the longest growing seasons of any common vegetable, upward of 120 days. And it can be a little finicky to get started, but the rewards are so worth it. Fresh celery from your garden has a flavour that is absolutely nothing like the pale, mild stuff you buy at the store. It's intense, aromatic, and deeply satisfying. Soak the seeds in warm water for 24 hours before planting and keep the soil consistently moist throughout germination. Celery seedlings are tiny and somewhat delicate at first, but they toughen up quickly. Now let's talk about some leafy greens and brassicas. Broccoli is one of the most popular vegetable crops for home gardeners, and for good reason. It's nutritious, productive, and relatively easy to grow. Starting broccoli indoors in early March gives you plants that will be ready to go outside in April or early May. And since broccoli prefers cooler growing conditions, that timing is ideal. It will mature and be ready to harvest before the summer heat sets in. Sow the seeds about 1/4 inch deep and expect germination in 5 to 10 days. Keep them under good light to prevent them from getting leggy. Cabbage is similar to broccoli in its timing and preferences, and it's an incredibly versatile crop. From coleslaw to sauerkraut to stuffed cabbage rolls, a well-grown head of cabbage is a thing of beauty. There are so many varieties to choose from: green, red, Savoy, Napa, each with its own texture and flavour profile. Start them the same way you'd start broccoli and make sure to harden them off gradually before transplanting. Brassicas are tough, but they appreciate a gentle introduction to outdoor conditions. Cauliflower is the fussier cousin of broccoli, but don't let that scare you away. It needs consistent temperatures, consistent moisture, and consistent care. But when you get it right, that dense white head is deeply satisfying to harvest. Purple and orange varieties have become really popular lately, and they're just as gorgeous on the plate as they are in the garden. Start cauliflower indoors in early March for a spring harvest, or if you're in a warmer climate, consider a fall planting schedule instead. Brussels sprouts are long-season vegetables that absolutely need to be started early, and March is the right time. They take anywhere from 100 to 130 days to maturity, so the sooner you get them going, the better. The flavour of homegrown Brussels sprouts, especially after they've been kissed by a light frost in autumn, is remarkable. They taste nutty, slightly sweet, and nothing like the bitter, overcooked things some of us remember from childhood. A well-roasted sprout fresh from the garden is genuinely life-changing. Let's shift to flowers for a moment, because a garden without flowers is like a story without colour. Petunias are one of the best flowers to start in early March because they have a long growing season and are absolutely spectacular in containers, hanging baskets, and garden borders. They come in every colour imaginable and bloom continuously through the whole summer. Start them indoors under good light. They need light to germinate, so don't cover the seeds with soil, just press them lightly onto the surface of moist seed-starting mix. My friend Ivy started petunias for the first time last year and couldn't believe how much joy a few window boxes brought her all summer long. Snapdragons are another flower worth starting in March. They prefer cooler growing temperatures, which makes them perfect for an early spring planting. The blooms are extraordinary. Tall, ruffled, and available in dozens of colour combinations. They'll bloom prolifically in spring and early summer, take a bit of a break during the peak summer heat, and then often come back for a second flush in early fall. Kids especially love snapdragons because you can gently squeeze the sides of the flower to make the mouth open and close. That never gets old, honestly. Lobelia is a delicate, cascading flower that looks absolutely stunning in hanging baskets and container gardens. The tiny, vivid blue flowers are almost electric in their intensity, and they bloom all summer long with minimal effort. Lobelia seeds are extremely fine, almost dust-like, so mix them with a little sand to distribute them more evenly. When sowing, don't cover them with soil, just press them gently onto the surface. They're slow to get going, but very worth the wait. Marigolds deserve a special mention, both for their beauty and their practical benefits. They are one of the most popular companion planting flowers because they repel a wide range of garden pests, and they're almost impossibly easy to grow. Starting marigolds in early March gives you big, bushy plants loaded with blooms by the time you're ready to set them out in the garden. Plant them around your tomatoes, peppers, and other vegetables to help deter aphids, nematodes, and other unwanted visitors. They're cheerful, colourful, and genuinely useful. The perfect garden citizen. Alyssum is a sweet, low-growing flower that most people don't think to start from seed, but I'm here to tell you it's absolutely worth it. The tiny white or lavender flowers have a honey-like fragrance that is just intoxicating on a warm day, and they attract beneficial insects like crazy. Alyssum is wonderful as a ground cover between other plants, along garden edges, or cascading over the sides of containers. Start them indoors in March, and you'll have lush, fragrant mats of bloom all season long. Let's not forget about celeriac, which is basically celery grown for its root rather than its stalks, and it has one of the longest growing seasons of any vegetable. Starting it in early March gives it the full season it needs to develop that big, knobby, incredibly flavourful root that tastes like celery crossed with parsley with a hint of nuttiness. It's roasted, mashed, or turned into a classic French remoulade, and once you grow your own, you'll wonder why you ever overlooked it at the market. It needs the same care as celery, warm, moist conditions to start, and consistent watering throughout the season. Finally, I want to talk about starting onions from seed. Most people buy onion sets or transplants, and that's perfectly fine, but starting onions from seed in early March opens up a world of variety that you simply can't find in sets. Exotic heirloom varieties, different colour combinations, unusual shapes. Onion seeds need an early start because they grow slowly. Sow them thickly in a tray, let them grow to about 4 to 6 inches tall, and then thin them out before transplanting. They look a bit like grass when they're young, which confuses new gardeners sometimes, but just trust the process. Rose, my gardening neighbour, started growing her own onions from seed 3 years ago and says she'll never go back to sets. The variety is just too exciting. Now, a few practical tips to tie all of this together. Lighting is genuinely the biggest challenge with indoor seed starting. A sunny south-facing window can work in some situations, but in early March, the days are still short and the light is often weak. Grow lights, even simple, affordable LED shop lights, make an enormous difference. Keep the lights about 2 to 3 inches above the seedlings and run them for 14 to 16 hours a day. You'll get compact, sturdy plants instead of the leggy, stretched-out seedlings that struggle later in the garden. Watering is the other area where most beginners go wrong, and it's usually too much rather than too little. Seed starting mix should feel like a wrung-out sponge, moist but not dripping. Overwatering leads to damping off, a fungal condition where seedlings suddenly collapse at the soil line. If you see this happening, improve your air circulation by running a small fan near your seedlings and ease up on the watering. Bottom watering, setting your trays in a shallow dish of water and letting them soak it up from below, is a great technique for avoiding overwatering the surface while keeping roots consistently hydrated. Labeling might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised how quickly you forget which tray is which once everything starts growing. I use simple popsicle sticks and a permanent marker. Write the plant name and the date you sowed. Future, you will be very grateful for this small act of organization, especially when you have 6 different tomato varieties going at once and need to remember which is which. Hardening off is the process of gradually introducing your indoor seedlings to outdoor conditions before transplanting, and it's a step that really matters. Start by putting your plants outside in a sheltered, shaded spot for just an hour or 2 on a mild day. Then bring them back in. Over the course of 1 to 2 weeks, gradually increase the time outside and expose them to more sun and wind. This prevents transplant shock and gives your plants the best possible chance of thriving in the garden. Skipping this step or rushing it can set your plants back significantly, and all that patient indoor growing time goes to waste. Something else I want to mention is the importance of choosing the right seed starting mix. Regular garden soil or potting mix is too heavy and dense for delicate seedlings. A good seed starting mix is light, fluffy, and sterile, meaning it won't introduce pathogens or weed seeds into your trays. You can buy pre-made mixes at any garden centre or make your own by combining equal parts peat moss or coco coir, perlite, and vermiculite. The goal is a mix that holds moisture without becoming compacted, that drains freely but doesn't dry out too fast, and that gives tiny roots plenty of room to spread and explore without hitting resistance. Speaking of roots, let's talk about pot size for a moment. Starting seeds in very small cells is fine for the first few weeks, but as seedlings grow, they need to be potted up into larger containers before their roots get cramped. Root-bound seedlings become stressed, and stressed plants are much more vulnerable to pests, diseases, and transplant shock. A good rule of thumb is to move your seedlings up to a larger pot once you can see roots beginning to emerge from the drainage holes at the bottom of their current container. This is called potting up, and it's one of those small steps that makes a really big difference in the final quality of your plants. I also want to spend a moment talking about fertilizing seedlings because it's something that confuses a lot of people. Good seed starting mix contains very little fertilizer by design. Seedlings don't need much nutrition in their first weeks because they're drawing on the energy stored in the seed itself. But once the first true leaves appear, which are the second set of leaves, after the initial seed leaves, you can start feeding with a diluted liquid fertilizer. Use it at half the recommended strength at first and increase gradually as the plants grow. Too much fertilizer too early can actually burn young roots and stunt growth. So err on the side of less rather than more. One thing that people don't talk about nearly enough in the context of seed starting is the emotional side of it. And I know that might sound a bit dramatic, but stay with me. There's something about the act of tending seedlings, checking on them each morning, watching for that first tiny green loop pushing up through the soil, adjusting the light, watering carefully, that creates a genuine sense of connection and care. Daisy told me once that her seed starting setup on the kitchen counter is the first thing she checks every morning, before coffee, before her phone. And Lucas says that the weeks he spends tending seedlings in March are some of the most calming weeks of his whole year. There's a rhythm to it that slows everything down in the best possible way. It's also worth thinking about what you want your garden to achieve this year. Are you trying to be more self-sufficient with vegetables? Do you want to grow more flowers for cutting and bringing inside? Are you focused on attracting pollinators and building a garden that supports local wildlife? Your answers to these questions should guide which seeds you prioritize. If pollinators are your focus, start more flowers. The alyssum, marigolds, and lobelia we talked about are all fantastic choices, and you might also consider starting zinnias, which are absolute magnets for butterflies and bees. If you want a cutting garden, snapdragons and other tall-stemmed flowers should be near the top of your list. For those of you who are growing in small spaces, apartment balconies, tiny patios, urban gardens, seed starting is actually even more valuable for you than for people with large plots. When space is limited, every single plant needs to earn its place, and starting from seed gives you the freedom to choose exactly the right compact or dwarf varieties for your situation. There are tomato varieties bred specifically for containers, peppers that grow happily in small pots, and herbs that thrive in window boxes. Starting from seed means you're not limited to whatever the garden centre happens to stock. You have access to thousands of varieties through seed catalogues and online stores, and that freedom is genuinely exciting. Ivy grew her entire garden on a 6th-floor apartment balcony last year, and she started everything from seed in early March. By July, she had containers overflowing with basil, cherry tomatoes, trailing petunias, and a dwarf pepper plant that she was absolutely obsessed with. She told me it was the most rewarding project she'd ever taken on, and she kept joking that her balcony had better produce than some of the yards she'd seen in the neighborhood. The point is, a small space is never an excuse to not grow things. It just requires a little more intentional planning. And seed starting puts that planning firmly in your hands. Let me also say something about record keeping, because it sounds boring, but it is incredibly useful. Keep a simple garden journal, even just a notebook or a notes app on your phone, where you track what you planted, when you planted it, how long germination took, when you transplanted, and how the plants performed through the season. After just 1 or 2 seasons of doing this, you'll have a personalized guide to your own specific garden, your own climate quirks, your own successes and failures. No book or YouTube video can give you that. It's knowledge you build yourself, and it compounds beautifully over time. There's also something to be said about the community aspect of seed starting. Seed swaps, where gardeners trade seeds with each other, have become wonderfully popular both in person at community gardens and libraries, and online through gardening forums and social media groups. If you end up with more seeds than you can possibly use, which is very easy to do, consider swapping them with other gardeners in your area. You might end up with a rare heirloom tomato variety from someone's grandmother's garden, or a pepper that's been grown in someone's family for generations. There's a beautiful kind of living history in that exchange, and it connects you to a community of people who care about growing things just as much as you do. I want to leave you with something that Lucas said to me last spring when we were both standing in our gardens admiring the beds we'd planted in March. He said that starting seeds early isn't just about getting a head start. It's about staying connected to the cycle of growing things, about participating in something that feels ancient and good and deeply satisfying in a way that's hard to put into words. And I think he's right. There's a continuity to it. Those seeds you plant in March carry the energy of all the gardens that came before yours, and the plants you grow will eventually produce seeds that carry your garden forward into seasons you haven't even imagined yet. So pull out those seed packets, find a sunny corner, and get your trays ready. Early March is here, spring is coming, and your garden is waiting to become something extraordinary. Thank you so much for spending this time with us here at Botanic Haven. If you found this helpful, share it with a fellow gardener. Leave a comment telling us which seed you're most excited to start this year, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another episode of good, honest garden talk. Happy growing, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.